we have breaking news coming out of Ann Arbor. This is from John Bacon. He is now reporting that Michigan is finalizing a 5-year, $55 million deal to make Jim Harbaugh the highest paid coach in the Big Ten. JP, initial thoughts?
Well, I think it's the right thing for Michigan to do. I'd put a contract in front of him. I've been saying it for weeks now. I probably still would have done it even throughout the scandal. So totally there. We'll continue this conversation in just a sec, but we want to welcome everybody in. Jake Butt, Michigan Wolverine, Joshua Perry, Ohio State Buckeye. Also want y'all to get involved. Scan that QR code. You can submit your content. You can also get in the YouTube chat. We love your comments. We respond to some of your comments, and we want to get that going. But this has been in the works for a little while. They've been talking about this contract and took a back seat, of course, during the scandal that was going on. But now it looks like the deal is close to being done. I think the most pivotal part of John Bacon's tweet there says the ball is now in Jim Harbaugh's court. So if you're Jim Harbaugh, what do you do now?
Yeah, well, so part of this is they're kind of forcing a response from Jim Harbaugh, right? Like this is tactics, this is leverage. Of course, the university knows Jim Harbaugh. He could go to the NFL. He's certainly flirted with it the past few years. By leaking this news, seems like it probably came from Michigan's court, right, to leak this news, to put the pressure on Jim Harbaugh to respond. I will say, I do believe Coach Harbaugh, part of this is he wants backing by the athletic administration and the university as a whole. He wants to feel like they have his back going forward. Certainly, you can make the case that hasn't been the case in recent years, forced him to take a pay cut after the COVID year. But, this is a good deal. This is a good deal. Highest paid coach in the conference. Ball is in Coach Harbaugh's court.
Yeah, and I understand Jim Harbaugh's feelings and his thoughts of having to take a pay cut. I think that any man would feel disrespected in a way by that, maybe underappreciated in a way by that, and the turnaround since then has been remarkable. I get where the university was at that time too, where it's like, hey man, we got to get something figured out. And so now you put him in position to honor all the things that he's done and to make him the highest paid coach in the Big Ten, an honor that he deserves. If I'm Jim Harbaugh, I feel iffy about the way that this is coming out, simply from the standpoint of, I think everybody needs to do their due diligence on opportunities that come their way. And I think that he would be, it would make a lot of sense for him to come back to Michigan. I think he'd be wanted and respected. I think he'd continue to do a good job there. I also think he's looking around at his locker room and saying, we got 44 seniors and it might be a little bit of a tougher road. And as much as they love me right now, we saw how quickly they can turn on you as well. I know the NFL has always been an intriguing opportunity for him, and he probably feels as if there's unfinished business both in college and the NFL that he's going to have to weigh there. He's in a great spot regardless. Like, big winner out of all of this, Jim Harbaugh. He's getting paid one way or another, whether it's college or the NFL. And personally, for the strength of college football, for the strength of the Big Ten, and for the strength of the University of Michigan, I'd love to see him back there.
Yeah, I mean, he's got all the leverage in the world. This is the smart thing from Michigan, though. Like, get this out, get this public. Basically, they're saying we back you, Coach Harbaugh, by putting this on the table. Is we believe in you, and we got the financial backing to make sure you know that as well.
I want to read this comment here from Mark Carmen. It says, we're going to find out Harbaugh's feelings with this deal. If he was looking for a deal that fixes 2021 contract cut, this would do it. If he's about the NFL, then it's going to be fleshed out. Now, I think that's what Michigan was trying to do.
Yeah.
Right? They're basically like, hey, buddy, this is what you wanted. You talked about it back in October, that you feel appreciated when somebody puts a contract in front of you. Now here we are.
Yeah, and really, gosh, I think about the state of college football and where the NFL is. It's why a lot of the NFL is the cream of the crop, right? No NIL.
There's no NIL. There's no transfer portal. You got contracts, right? You know who's going to be there and who's not.
For him to go to the NFL, I think a team would not only have to, at a minimum, match that number, probably exceed it, but they would also have to say, Coach, this is your team. This is your roster. We will back you and we'll step aside, right? That's a whole reason. That's part of the big reason why he left the Niners in the first place.
I don't even think that they would necessarily have to match or exceed the deal. I think it's the second part of what you're talking about is they just acknowledge that he's the guy. They give him the freedom to operate, and he could, with the time that he saves not having to deal with portal and recruiting and NIL, by having true off seasons in the NFL, I think it might balance a couple $1 million if they come up short on a contract offer in the NFL.
And I don't even think it has to be a perfect situation, because part of what makes Coach Harbaugh an attractive coach, he has a history of turning around programs and turning around organizations.
No doubt.
That's why there's going to be a team in a desperate situation that knows what we've been doing hasn't been good enough, Chicago Bears, maybe they go out and get Coach Harbaugh. So will be interesting to see. We'll keep you guys covered. But let's go down to Columbus, right, JP, because yesterday Ohio State running back Chip Trayanum entered the transfer portal. That's a third Ohio State running back to leave the team, joining Evan Pryor in the portal. Mayan Williams has announced that he is declaring for the NFL draft. So that now makes a total of 13 Buckeyes in the portal. JP, I guess the first question is, what is your level of concern right now, if any?
I'm not entirely too concerned. I'll kind of get to that here in a little bit. I think the sheer numbers early on is what is alarming to people, and I'm certain that there might be a couple other names that go in the portal after the bowl game here. But this is an Ohio State team that's not playing in the college football playoff, right? So timing-wise, these guys want to get a jump on their recruitment out of the portal, and I totally understand that. I said this the other day too, but when you start to go through the list of names, I know Kyle McCord stands out because he was 12-1 as a starter going back to the start he had a couple years ago and what he did this year. And Julian Fleming, who's a former 5-star starter at wide receiver, I think Kyle McCord was told that he was going to have to compete for his job, and he said, if I'm playing one more year in college football, I want to go somewhere where I'm not going to have to do that. Julian Fleming, for as much contribution as he made, was wildly inconsistent. His stats were down from a year ago. I see why he wants to leave. And the rest of these guys, I mean, tell me which one of these dudes is a major contributor outside of Chip Trayanum.
Period. And here's the thing. So you look at that list of names, and I'll answer that question with this. All of that is forgiven with the right quarterback. And I believe Ohio State, fit in situation matters significantly for a quarterback. Ohio State has the NIL, they have the big branding, and they have a system and skill positions as well as a defense that'll get you the ball back. I really don't know that there's a better destination as a quarterback to go than Ohio State. All their quarterbacks go to New York and compete for a Heisman, right?
Yeah, I think that's part of the deal, and I know Ryan Day knows how critical that this quarterback decision is going to be. I also think that he likes the two guys that are still in the program that are going to be competing for reps when they get to the bowl game here, the Cotton Bowl, and Lincoln Kienholz and Devin Brown. And so I think when you add another veteran transfer who's an impact guy, everybody gets better if they stay, right? Because now you're really competing. It's an environment where guys are fighting for a job, one of the best jobs in college football. It's just about bringing in the right veteran. I think that's what people are going to be most worried about.
So let's stay in Columbus and let's talk about some other storylines. So you have Travion Henderson, who is now being reported he's expected to return to school. First off, I know you're very involved in this. Do you have any insight on this decision and what impact would this have on the Buckeyes?
Yeah, Travion Henderson, I do know is he's right now, it seems like, leaning toward coming back. At bare minimum, he is undecided, and the thought process of coming back is real to him. Obviously, the collective's trying to figure out what an NIL package looks like. But for him, I think it's a couple of things. Number one, he's trying to put together that season that's been elusive to him in Columbus, where, freshman year was really good, and then he's been banged up for a lot of the time there in Columbus. I think he wants to have that truly impactful season. He wants to be a Big Ten champion. He wants to beat Michigan. These are all real things that are going through his mind as he's trying to make his decision here. And when you start to look at running backs, I don't know what the grades are on a guy like Travion Henderson, but probably the ceiling for what he could do is a second-round pick. Maybe you're looking at a third or fourth rounder, just the way that the NFL puts value on running backs. And so if you're Travion Henderson, you're saying if I could get an NIL package that's somewhere in the seven-figure range, that year coming back in terms of legacy and in terms of building the draft stock might be more important than going right now.
Yeah, so if he's going to be, the way I'm thinking about this too, just from a numbers standpoint before we get to a fan comment, but hey, if you're going to be a second round pick, the contract's going to be the contract, right? So that is what he's going to make. To make $7 million, and I'm sure he made some cash right now, you talk about getting to your second contract at the next level, this is insurance, right? This is all cheese on top. You're going to be drafted where you're going to be drafted. Maybe you can play yourself into the first round if you stay healthy all next year and you play at your best. But to make seven figures, maybe more, maybe you're talking $2 million. Maybe you're talking $3 million. Yep. It's on the table. So we had a comment from Nolan. Let's see what he had to say as far as some of this goes. So here's Nolan, and he said, I'd love to see year-by-year breakdowns of total percentage of D1 athletes in the transfer portal without any data. It seems as if this is the heaviest year for the portal. I think that is the case, right?
Yeah,
this is a record year in the portal.
Yeah, they said that this was the heaviest day one, right? When the portal opened up on Monday officially, they said there were more guys in the portal than there had ever been. And so I think that is true. And guys are being enticed by name, image, and likeness. I also think that there are a number of guys who have been in programs for 2 or 3 years now that have not played. And football is unlike basketball or golf or tennis or swimming or some of these other sports where you can join a rec league and you can continue to play. When your football career is over in college, if you're not an NFL player, you're done. Some of these guys just want to play ball somewhere. And I think that's valid.
And it's not even about NIL in that point, right? Yeah. It's just about the finite little window of opportunity you have to play. Playing college football, it's some of the best times of my life. It's so enjoyable. Most guys, that is the peak opportunity. The peak opportunity to go compete at what will be their highest level. So that's the transfer portal at its best. The truth is, there's going to be a lot of guys in that portal. They don't have a home. They're not going to find a home.
Let me get you the numbers, speaking of not finding a home. So 1,127 guys in the portal, up 44% from a year ago. So, yeah, the numbers are a little bit ridiculous right now. And to your point, go in the portal, right? The portal has a door in, but it doesn't always have a door out.
Yep.
So some of these guys got to be careful about that.
Okay, so we got another comment. We guys are active today, so shout out to you guys. How about Mark? Mark, you're always active in the chat. It's good to have you. Jake, how did the pursuit of a win over Ohio State impact your return for the 2016 season?
It's a great question.
This is a great question. So after my 2015 year, I was an All-American. I won the Big Ten Tight End of the Year. I was in the finalists for the Mackies, and I got a 2nd to 3rd round draft grade when I submitted it. And I had some thinking to do. I was 0-3 against Ohio State at that point, and I value legacy greatly. I don't know what it would have been if I was a top 10 pick. That's life-changing money to a different degree. But I knew I wanted to beat Ohio State. Like, that win is so precious, and it weighed heavily on my mind. I also knew that our team returning in 2016 had a damn good chance of doing it. So out of all the reasons I came back, that was probably number one. And I didn't even have NIL money at the time. I made no additional cash. That was number one, high priority on my list. Unfortunately, didn't get it done.
Yeah.
It's all good, though.
But I think legacy does play into it. We heard Marvin Harrison Jr. talking today about his legacy, and I don't anticipate he's going to come back. But guys think about that kind of stuff. It's more than just money to a lot of players, especially when you're in a place like Ohio State or Michigan where history and legacy means so much. But we want to go ahead and get back to our RCBC draft here. It's been a lot of fun, and we've gotten through 15 rounds here. We'd like to show you some of the results from that. You got the Michigan team here basically for Team Blue Corner, which is
pretty much.
I mean, there's some good players, no doubt.
Yeah.
It's definitely a homer team. See what I did? Got one of the best wide receivers nobody ever talks about. Got linebacker of the year. Got a guy who could have been linebacker of the year, and of course, I had to get a Wolverine in there as well. But now it's time to get to today's picks to wrap up our draft, and I'll get us started off here. Now, early in this draft, you went with a couple of running backs. You took Blake Corum, then you took Travion Henderson. Those are top 2 backs in this league, clearly. But I think that this league is deep in running backs. That's why I had the luxury of waiting. I went with Braylon Allen, the running back out of Wisconsin. He's a little bit banged up, but when he's healthy, he is, like, ridiculous. He's got the speed. He's got the power. I think he started running with more aggression, too, later on in the year. And he can catch the ball a little bit out of the backfield as an underrated kind of switch-it-up type weapon. So I feel good about this pick.
Yeah, and before we get to my 2 picks, the best part is he's running behind Michigan's offensive line, right? Buddy. That was one of your early picks, so I like that. So at this point, we had kind of out-leveraged each other, and the draft started to roll. So I knew I needed an offensive line. I went with Ohio State's offensive line. I was critical of them certainly throughout the year,
so was I.
But probably the second best offensive line as a unit in the conference. A number of their guys made all conference honors, so I felt good having them, especially with my skill positions. We can help hide some of their issues. And as an extension of the offensive line, my next pick was Cade Stover. Of course, you got Colston Loveland, who we both agree is the best tight end in the conference. Cade Stover, slightly more productive year when it comes to numbers. So starting to shape this team out a little bit. Those are my 2 picks.
Cade Stover's a good pick, man. He does the dirty work. He was very productive.
Farm boy.
the familiarity with the Ohio State offensive line certainly helps there. I had to get my other running back, so ended up going with Kyle Monungai, the running back out of Rutgers.
Might be the best pick of the draft right here.
I mean, it's best value, I think, super sleeper pick, right? Like, I mean, this guy was really good, and he was running behind a decent offensive line. It's not a great offensive line, though. It was an offense where you knew he was the focal point because Gavin Wimsatt is not a great thrower of the football, and he continued to get the tough, gritty yards. Look at that, 5.1 yards per carry, 217 carries, my goodness. And then Kyle McCord went with the quarterback there. Again, he took JJ with the first pick, so had to get Kyle in there. Currently without a team, but for the purposes of this one, we got him. Listen, we're critical of him. We know he's not great. You surround him with talent, he can certainly spin the ball. 24 touchdowns to just 6 interceptions and won 11 games this regular season. Like, top end, certainly not, but is he a guy who I think fits in my offense? Absolutely.
In an all-star game format, he's good. Okay, just to put a bow on this, I needed another safety, a Swiss Army knife, a guy I feel great to just put a bow on my own defense was Sebastian Castro. So there's our list. We'll summarize it at a later point. And guys, we do have to get to a quick break right here. On the other side, we got some Manny Diaz news. Could he be leaving to Duke? Stick around. That's on the other side of the break.
Name your all-time Michigan football player, Mount Rushmore.
Okay, there's a couple ones that are obvious. I mean, Charles Woodson is obvious. A legend in college, a legend in the pros, an absolute leader. There's nothing that needs to be said beyond that. Desmond Howard is another one. When you think of Michigan legend, what's the first play that comes to mind? It's the Heisman pose in the end zone. So that one makes sense. I'm going to go with Steve Hutchinson, offensive lineman. He's got a gold jacket. Played a decade plus in the NFL. He's not in the College Football Hall of Fame yet. He's been on the ballot for a few years. It's a matter of time before he gets in. This is where it gets interesting. And I'm going to go with Anthony Carter, wide receiver. You know, Braylon Edwards is another one, but to me, what Anthony Carter meant was one of the first ones to do it. Legend at both levels. It was between him. I think one name that we may look to in a few years is Aiden Hutchinson, because I think we can pivot and say where Michigan is today as a program, there's a lot of credit to Aiden Hutchinson. But regardless, I'm going to stick with Anthony Carter.
All right, you saw Jake's picks right there for his Michigan Mount Rushmore, and not all Michigan fans were on board with what he selected there. So let's take a look at a comment here. We got one from Bob Bainey07 on Instagram. Said, hello, do your history homework before doing a clip. How about Tom Harmon, 1940 Heisman winner, Maxwell Award winner, AP Athlete of the Year, and first Michigan great, number 98, which your boy Devin Gardner wore when I was tackling him in the rivalry game. If it didn't happen in the last 25 years, guess it doesn't matter, huh?
Hey, thanks, Bob. Yeah, appreciate it, man. You know what? Here. You can do my job. Who would you have taken out? Who would you? It was so obvious, Bob. Damn, you're a genius. I'm gonna reach out to you and maybe I'll pay you to be my consultant for football. Thank you, Bob. Appreciate it, man.
Damn, you're a genius.
Yeah. You did a Mount Rushmore too,
yeah,
right? All right, let's check
clip.
out your Mount Rushmore.
Name your all-time Ohio State football player, Mount Rushmore.
All right, all-time Mount Rushmore for Ohio State football. Number one, Archie Griffin, only two-time Heisman Trophy winner. He has to be in there or else the Mount Rushmore is invalid. The second person I would put on there is Chris Spielman, who was a phenomenal All-American linebacker, one of the greatest linebackers to play the game, really set the mold for what a backer should look like at The Ohio State University. Number three, I'm going to go Orlando Pace, who was a tackle, a Hall of Famer. Dude was huge. He was pancaking people. Like, they even had the commercials for this man talking about the pancakes. He was that good. And then number four for me, I'm going to go for a player who was one of my favorite in my childhood, and that is Troy Smith, who also won a Heisman Trophy. Led some really fun Ohio State teams, was a quarterback in the 06 Ohio State-Michigan game. That was one of the greatest I've ever seen. So there you go.
Couple comments there from your Buckeye fans as well. Eddie George doesn't make it, JP. What do you think?
So Eddie George, I think, would have had an argument to be up there. My mom's favorite Buckeye, no doubt. This ain't my mom's list, so this is my list. And so I didn't have Eddie George on there. It's not to disparage Eddie George, it just didn't make the cut.
Man, it's funny, when people make comments on social, like what this is opinions, right? These are opinions.
We got four
you can have your
spots,
opinion. You got
man.
4 spots. I mean, my goodness. Hey, there is one spot for the Duke's head coach, though. There is only one spot, and there is one name that has emerged from all the noise in the cloud. That is Penn State defensive coordinator Manny Diaz. JP, I want to hit this from 2 angles. And one, what is this loss potentially to Penn State? And 2, how do you like the fit for Manny Diaz at Duke?
Manny Diaz, wonderful coach. I think he's proven as a coordinator. He was head coach at Miami, didn't go so well there, so I think he's trying to right some wrongs. But for the Penn State impact here, it's huge, right? We talked about a defense that has an identity, a coordinator who is creative and aggressive and really knows how to put guys in a great spot. James Franklin, I mean, he just hired a new OC. He's up against it right now. This is a huge loss for that program, in my opinion.
Look at those Penn State defensive numbers. It's about as good as you can get up towards the top, which means there's more room to go down than there is to go up. So the coordinator to head coach transition is really interesting because, coordinators is about X's and O's. Head coach is CEO. And usually, Manny Diaz has a very unique defense. So he's going to probably bring that defense with him to Duke. So then when you're playing against yourself in spring and camp, you have to develop an offense that can beat your defense, right? How does that fit together as a team then becomes the challenge of a head coach, right? You may have to give something up to gain something from a culture, stability, an offensive standpoint. Will be interesting, though.
All right, so let's go back to this fantasy draft here, and we'd like for you all to let us know whose team would win here. Let's start with the red team's offense versus the team blue corner defense. Listen, man.
Look at that D-line. Look at that front seven.
Brother, we're cooking, though. We got Michigan offensive line. Y'all ain't covering Colston. Y'all ain't covering Marv. Y'all ain't covering Isaiah. Y'all can't tackle Braylon or Kyle. It's just McCord can't turn the football over.
But that D-line is so disruptive, you're not going to have enough time to do it. And then we're playing press across the board.
Brother, I really don't need that much time with the weapons that I have, though. We can run screens with Colston. We can run screens with Isaiah. We can run screens with Marv and with
now
the
with
backs.
Mikey Sainers still back there, though, you can't run screens.
Bro,
No, you can't. He's locked in on that. I think you can get to 10 points. I think you can get to 10 points. But let's flip it to now we're going to see the real high-flying offense. Look at this one. What's the blue offense versus the red defense looking like?
You guys are getting cooked.
I think you get to 10. Now this, I see at least 25 points. I see 25 points on the board right here. Look at that quarterback. Look at that.
No, you don't. No, you don't. Roman catches touchdowns against the early season competition. Emeka disappeared, so that's all good. Bro, look at who we got. Chris Jenkins eating, Mason Graham eating, Chop Robinson gonna have about 4 sacks, Jack Sawyer gonna have about 3 TFLs, Abdul Carter's gonna be blitzing, Tommy Eichenberg's gonna be cooking. Oh my goodness!
I got blue.
Will Johnson got all the interceptions.
I got blue team 25-12 in this game. To be honest with you, I got the blue team for sure.
No shot.
Make sure you vote. We need to hear you guys what you guys got to say.
We'll see you next week.